You may not be interested in the culture war, but the culture war is very, very interested in you. From DEI loopholes in Auburn's architecture program to queer criminology courses targeting conservative students, the enemy is no longer at the gates, they're inside. And all that is coming up on 1819 News, the podcast. We have an incredible culture here in the state of Alabama, but our politics and public policy don't reflect the people of Alabama. Media drives culture. Culture is what drives politics and public policy. Welcome, everyone, to 1819 News, the podcast. I'm Bryan Dawson, CEO of 1819 News and host of this here podcast, where we are in pursuit of a free and flourishing Alabama every single week. Got a podcast today, an episode today that is, it's going to be going all over the place. It's going to get kind of deep into some theology that you probably are not familiar with. But I'm going to tie it all together and put a pretty little bow on one of the things that I think that we as a state, and specifically the people who are in positions of power in this space, if they do what they're supposed to do, they're going to catch blowback, and then we need to have their back when that blowback comes. But they're going to have to show the initial courage that they're willing to go to war, at the extent necessary to win back our institutions. And so I'll just begin. A quote: "It's the one constant in life. You build something worth having, someone's going to try to take it." That's John Dutton from Yellowstone. Last week, I used the Yellowstone metaphor to show that we are being naive when it comes to protecting our nation. We have built the greatest nation on earth ever to exist, and we've not protected it. And so our forefathers bled, fought, and died to give us such a great inheritance, and we, the posterity in which they speak in the preamble, we've not protected it. And so we're squandering it. Not only have we not protected it, we're squandering it. And we, the posterity that they speak of in the preamble, we have a responsibility to honor our forefathers and what they fought and bled and died for. And we have squandered that we've abdicated our responsibility. We've squandered our inheritance, and we're reaping the consequences of it. However, it doesn't have to continue on this way. We can step up to the plate, and we can begin to take responsibility for taking it back. And that's what I'm going to advocate that we do. But how do you take a nation back? Well, you have to take the states back, which is why we're 1819 News and we're focused on the state of Alabama. Well, how do we take our states back? Well, you could break it down by going into counties and then cities and then towns and then churches and then families, which is 100% true. But it's also the institutions, okay? It's the institutions. And so, as John Dutton says, if you build something, anything worth having, someone's going to try and take it. If you have something good, if you build something good that's powerful, that's influential, that's of value, there's going to be someone there trying to take it. Okay, it's as real as the law of gravity, as I said last week. It's as real as the law of gravity. It can be seen clearly in creation when, like I said last week, you have a garden. Critters are going to get into it, whether it's deer, whether it's squirrels, whether it's worms, whether it's other bugs or something. It's going to devour this good thing that has the fruit that you desire, the good things that a garden is supposed to produce. It could even be weeds choking it out. You have to keep that stuff out of the garden so that the fruit that you desire is there. And hopefully you're going to see this a really clear metaphor that I'm making, that you have to keep the bad stuff out so that the fruit doesn't get choked out or eaten, okay? That's essentially the basics of what we're going to be talking about today. It's a very basic principle. And we're going to refer to this, if you build something worth having, someone's going to try to take it. We're going to, moving forward in this podcast, we're going to refer to that as the Dutton Principle, okay? And so this week, I want to take the Dutton Principle and apply it to our once great institutions in America and the West, specifically our universities, And even more specifically, I want to apply the Dutton Principle to Auburn University, because I think this school is the crown jewel of our state and it's worth fighting to save. You might not like their football team. I know the rivalry is real, but we're talking about an institution that will shape and mold the hearts, minds, and souls of more Alabamians than any other institution in the state. The University of Alabama may have more students, but 64% of those students are not from Alabama, and the ones that are from Alabama will likely go on upon graduating and go to some other state. And so what happens at Auburn has more to do with the future of our state than any other institution in the state. Okay? That is why Auburn is so important. We get, a lot of accusations that we're Alabama football fans, so we're attacking Auburn, and that's how one of the things is just I get Alabama football culture. I get that, but like our minds are so eaten up with that to criticize Auburn because of the woke stuff that's going on there, they think that we're Alabama football fans and that's why we're doing it. Not because we actually care about the institution that is Auburn and would love to see it restored to its heights pre-secular subversion and progressive Marxist communist subversion. We'd like to see it restored to that. We'd like to see Auburn University actually be the most conservative university in the United States, and not comparatively to the next most conservative, which is all really not very conservative. But like if they just ripped off all the shackles and bonds and just said, we're going to be a good conservative university and we're just going to do things the way that we know we need to do things without fear. What an incredible university. And when you see Tommy Tuberville is the governor of Alabama, which I'm predicting that that's going to be the case, that opportunity is going to be there, but the people in positions of power at that university are going to have to take risks. And if and when they take risks, we need to have their back, but they're going to have to show that first point of courage at eradicating this stuff from the schools. So, and Auburn is not unique in their wayward drift, but they are. The other reason we go after Samford the way that we do is like, man, no one expects this stuff of Auburn and Samford. You expect the University of Alabama that's kind of more elite. Like Richard Delgado was teaching law there. He's the guy that like brought back critical race theory. Okay. University of Alabama at Birmingham, you expect that from those universities. Auburn and Samford, on the other hand, you don't. And so, Auburn is not unique in their wayward drift, but they are unique in the fact that I believe that they're savable and worth saving. So there you go. Once great conservative and Christian institutions have been taken over by progressives all over America and the West. And so Auburn is not unique. And to go through this, I'm about to dive into kind of a theological, historical diatribe that's going to show you a meta-narrative and how all of this plays together, and then wrap it up into a bow and call on those who are in power to fight back with the same furiosity in which the culture war is being waged against us. We're going to have to meet that and actually go harder. But let me give you the meta-narrative, okay? So the story of Christendom and colonization. Oh my gosh, colonization, oogity boogity. They said we're not allowed to talk about that. Okay, colonization's actually good. You get a hat that says make colonizing great again. It's actually a very beautiful thing. How did America get here? How did the West get here? Okay, I digress. So the story of Christendom and colonization. Order to chaos, beginning with creation in the garden. So you may have heard Tucker when he came on the show and he said that he hates chaos. He said, what did God do when he created everything? Is he brought order to chaos. And that's right. Creation was order to chaos. But inside that creation, you had the garden, which was order, and the rest of the world was wild and chaotic. And so the idea was that the garden, which was tamed and ordered, the goal was to be fruitful and multiply and subdue the earth and exercise dominion over it and expand that order to the rest of the wild that was the rest of the earth. It's basically tame the earth, bring order to chaos all over the earth. Make Christ's rule known, make God's rule known in every square inch of the earth. Bring the earth in subjection to King Jesus. Make his rule known. Take dominion. Subdue in the name of King Jesus. Make his rule known. Bring order to chaos all over the earth. Be fruitful and multiply and subdue the earth and exercise dominion over the fish of the seas and the birds in the air and every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. It's called the creation mandate. Bring order to chaos and make my rule known. That's essentially it. Bring order to chaos all over the earth and make my rule known. What I say goes all over the earth, right? We say, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. His rule is obeyed perfectly and is known all throughout heaven. And so we're saying, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Okay, so his perfect rule is coming down to this earth, and we make his rule known through faithful covenant obedience on this earth through institutions like the family, the church, the state, and these other culture-shaping institutions. And so this is called the creation mandate, and when you combine it with the Great Commission, you get colonization. Colonization. Again, I'm making the argument that colonization is a net good. If you look upon society and civilization, it's actually good and it's beautiful. So what is the Great Commission? Well, what you've probably heard is go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. It's probably what you've heard. But I call that the truncated Great Commission. The Great Commission is actually all authority, and this is Jesus speaking, and he says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey all that I have commanded. So all authority is his. Baptize them and teach them to obey. Make my rule known. Okay, so it's this similar concept. And so when you go to be fruitful and multiply and subdue the earth and exercise dominion over the fish of the seas, the birds in the air, and every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth, and then Christ claims all authority in heaven and on earth. So again, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Christ's authority, all in heaven is his, and all on earth is his. And because all authority is his, we can go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teach them to obey. What is disciple making? What is it to disciple someone? It's teaching them to obey Christ. Obedience is not legalism. Doing what God tells you to do is obedience. It's not legalism. Adding rules that are outside of what Christ actually tells you to obey is legalism. But obedience is not legalism, and discipleship is teaching someone how to obey their heavenly Father. Jesus says, if you love me, you will obey my commandments. Okay? If you love me, you will obey my commandments. The Great Commission says we're teaching them to obey all his commandments. We're teaching them to love Jesus, and to love him is to obey him. Very simple stuff, but man, there has been some teaching that's come into the church that uproots and completely ruins all of this very basic stuff that is what has been taught in the church for nearly 2,000 years. But I'm not going to get into all that. So the establishment and advancement of Christendom was this. Worth noting, what is Christendom? Western civilization used to be referred to as Christendom. So all of the castles and lands that were Christian throughout Western civilization, it's called Christendom, and what Christendom actually translates to is where Christ has dominion, where Christ's rule is made known on earth through its kings and its laws and its institutions, where there's a Christian ethos, okay, where the assumptions that are made about how we go about everything are just Christian, okay? It's just a Christian ethos. Christ's rule is made known on this earth. It's where Christ has dominion. This is Christendom, where Christ has dominion. And it ranged from, at one point, east of Jerusalem all the way to France, Spain, and England. And then people came across the ocean and created, America, which is the crown of Christendom. Peak Western civilization is the United States of America. So yes, I'm arguing that the United States of America was a Christian nation in its founding. So the establishment and advancement of Christendom was this. And if you remember, a couple weeks ago for Thanksgiving, I had Colonel John Eidsmoe on, and we read the Mayflower Compact. And what did they say their purpose was of risking their lives and everything to get on a boat and cross the ocean and plant the flag of Christ on a new land? And they said that the whole purpose of it was the advancement of Christ's kingdom. Kingdom, where the king has dominion, Christendom, Christ the King's dominion, expanding Christ's dominion on this new piece of land. We're going to make Christ's rule known in this wild land that is untamed and chaotic. We, Christians, are going to come over here to this wild and chaotic land, and we're going to bring order to chaos, and we're going to do it through colonization, okay? So Christians would go into a new land, they would build homes, they would plant churches, they would create schools, and then they would establish a small government to oversee it all, and these were called colonies, and they were good. Christ's rule was made known in these small gospel outposts called colonies. Christendom, as I said, means where Christ has dominion. These colonies brought order to chaos. Every little section of untamed land that was filled with, yes, savages, okay, and that was wild and untamed, we brought civilization there by bringing order to chaos through these things called colonies. Okay, so these colonies brought order to chaos, and inside of these colonies, in each respective space, order was being brought to chaos by the men in their respective sphere. This is what Christian conquest is. It's not by sword. It's not like Muslims where it's convert or die. It's literally going into new lands, taming those lands, preaching the gospel to the natives that are there, but establishing Christ's rule and expanding his gospel kingdom through this process of colonization. So we've lost this sentiment of conquest, by the way, in this kind of new modern evangelicalism that dominates. But in each respective thing inside of the colonies, fathers made Christ's rule known in their homes. And so, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. One of these little areas of Christ's kingdom is your home, man. And is Christ's rule being made known in your home? Do you have a Christian home? We know the verse in Joshua that says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Christ is Lord of our homes. He's not just Lord of our hearts, okay? He is absolutely Lord of our hearts, but it doesn't end at our heart. He's actually is his rule made known in your home. Are your rules, do they line up with the Bible? Is up, and down in your household according to the scriptures? Is what that which God calls good in your home? Is that which God calls evil? Is that evil in your home? Do you label it the way that God does? Are you ordering your home according to the scriptures? Okay. So fathers make Christ's rule known in their homes where they governed and brought order to chaos. Okay. This is not a hard concept. Dad, when you get home from work, if you're the actual authority figure in your home and you're the disciplinarian, no matter what, no matter how good my wife is at bringing, biblical discipline to children, the father is the authority figure who represents Christ's rule in the home. And when he comes home, there's immediately order brought to chaos. Every time I walk in the door after being gone for 7 or 8 hours, you can tell it's been a little chaotic, but when I walk in the door, there's lots of hugs and kisses and everything like that, but it's order from that point forward. I'm bringing order to chaos in my home. That's my job, okay? And so that ability to bring order to your home is actually the basis for whether you should have authority outside of your home. So the Bible uses a father's ability to bring order to chaos in his home to see if he is fit for being an elder or overseer in the church. Okay? That's literally what the Bible says. If you cannot rule your own household well, how will you rule the household of God? And people hate this idea of ruling, right? Because we've been so democratized in our sacred democracy of one man, one vote, and all of this other stuff. We hate the idea of any form of centralized authority, even though it's crystal clear in the Bible that the home is centralized authority is wrapped up in a man who is submitted to Christ. And the only authority that that man has in his home is that which Christ gives him. Okay. But how he uses that authority is his rule. Okay. And if his rule is good, that means he's not using the authority that God has given him for his own personal gain and gratification. He's using the authority that God has given him for the betterment and flourishing of those under his care. And so you can tell whether a man is using his authority in the proper ways by his family. You look at his wife, and you look at his children. Does his wife look like a hostage and his children are a bunch of wild a-holes? He's not very good with authority. Don't make him an elder. Okay? Don't make him a deacon. Don't make him the head of any institution. Don't make him a governor. Don't make him a senator. Don't make him a House of Representative, any of those things. And we knew this instinctively. That's why every single campaign picture you've ever seen for the last 50 years has a guy with his family doctored up to make it look like his family's, displaying the fruit that you would want in someone who knows how to use authority properly, because good use of authority produces good fruit in the garden that is your home, right? You keep the bad stuff out and you encourage the good stuff, the nutrients and the sunlight and all the things that the things in your home need to produce fruit. That's your job. You're the gardener of your home. You keep the bad stuff out and the good stuff in, right? Are you starting to see the pattern here of how things work and how God designed things and created things? And if you do good at keeping the bad out, which is hard to do in this fallen world, and encouraging and nurturing and infusing the good, it produces good fruit. And the evidence of you being able to use the authority that God has entrusted into you in your respective sphere is a fruitful family, a happy family, a wife that loves you and submits to you gladly. And she has everything she needs to manage the household well. You're not asking her to make bricks without straw. Okay. Your children are obedient and lovely and they are happy. Okay. That's the fruit you're looking for in someone that you want to put in charge of a state, as a House of Representatives, as a senator, a state senator, whatever, you get it. Or if you're going to put them over any institution, that's the fruit that you want to see. Someone who knows how to use authority for the benefit of those who are under them, or the people under that person's rule. Are they flourishing or are they suffering? And if they're suffering, then do not put that person in a position of authority. It's just the way that God has designed things, and you have to have wisdom to see these things, okay? Anyway, I got off on a tangent there. So, the natural outworking of that principle, if you cannot rule your own household well, how will you rule the household of God? That principle should be leadership in any institution. Can you bring order to chaos in the realms of influence the Lord has given you? Do those who are under your authority flourish? And if so, then you don't have to go be an authority somewhere else, but that should be the lowest common denominator. If this person cannot bring about fruit in his home, then why on earth would we trust him to use authority anywhere else? So, in order to bring order to chaos, you must protect the thing that you've been, So in order to bring order to chaos, you must protect what you've been entrusted from those who would seek to steal, kill, or destroy it. Okay, so if you are put in a position of authority over an institution or a state or a nation, there are going to be those who seek to steal it, kill it, or destroy it. It's the critters getting into the garden. It's the people trying to steal the Dutton Ranch. Okay, it's that same principle. And so when you are responsible or entrusted with an institution or anything else, it's your family, it's a church, it's a business, it's whatever, your job is to keep the bad out and to infuse the good. But there are those who will seek to steal, kill, and destroy this good thing that you've built. Remember the Dutton Principle. I've found it a constant in life. Whenever you built something worth having, there's going to be someone there trying to take it, steal, kill, or destroy it. You must know and understand the Dutton Principle, because it is no different than Adam's failure in the garden. He didn't protect his wife, and she was deceived by the devil and brought about the fall, though it was Adam who was blamed because he failed to protect his wife. He allowed wickedness into the garden, allowed it around his wife, who he was responsible for, and ultimate destruction followed. I'm hoping you guys are seeing this principle, this picture that I'm painting about being responsible for something. And by being responsible for it, you have to keep the bad out and infuse the good. And keeping the bad out is the Dutton Principle. You have to understand, if you have something good, there's going to be something as natural as it's a law like gravity. Every time you drop something, it's going to hit the ground. Every single time, 10 times out of 10, every single time you have something good that's worth having, there's going to be something or someone there trying to take it or destroy it. Okay? And in the garden, it was the serpent, and he deceived his wife. The wife gave the fruit to Adam, and he ate, and ultimately destruction came because he did not do a good job at this. Adam needed to know the Dutton Principle, or he could have just obeyed God and been a masculine man who crushed the head of the serpent. But instead, we would need another Adam, Jesus Christ, to come and crush the serpent's head. But I'm not going to get into that. All right. Outside of that, think about in the New Covenant and how Christendom has been established. From Europe, from Jerusalem to Europe, Western Europe, over across the ocean and planting the flag of Christ in America, which is the crown of Christendom. Everything Christians built for Christ in the West. Think about everything that we've built. The most incredible civilization that's ever existed is Western civilization, which is Christendom. Think about Oxford and Cambridge and castles and kingdoms and, everything, and Harvard and Princeton and Yale and hospitals and everything that we've built in the West. Think about it. It's amazing. And they say that we don't have culture. Are you kidding me? It's the greatest culture that's ever existed. Okay. We don't have culture. Okay. Everything Christians built for Christ in the West has been overwhelmed by Muslims and third world migration patterns, or it has been subverted and hijacked by progressive Marxist communists. Okay. Go back and look at the charters of Harvard and Princeton and Yale and the Ivy League institution, the Ivy League universities, whatever you want to call them. And they were literally planted by Christians for the glory of God and the advancement of the Christian faith. That was the reason those institutions were built. And the people who were put in charge of those institutions, what did they do? Did they recognize the Dutton Principle? Or were they like Adam in the garden and they failed to keep the serpent out? They failed to keep the wickedness out. They didn't do what was required to beat back evil. Okay? Their garden, okay, everything of value inside those institutions, thinking of it as a garden, was devoured by wild critters to keep the Alabama thing going. Do you see the pattern? I'm hoping I'm bringing the pattern home over and over and over. So, everything Christians built for Christ in the West has been overwhelmed by Muslims and third world migration patterns, or it has been subverted and hijacked by progressive Marxists and communists. All because Westerners forgot the Dutton Principle. So it's a strange thing to see universities in deep red Alabama filled with professors and curriculum promoting an ideology that is diametrically opposed to the culture and ethos of the vast majority of the people in the state. It's especially troubling to see this at Auburn University, who has a more conservative reputation with conservative trustees and conservative students who are from conservative families who are, for the most part, alumni of the school before things went this bad. Though the subversion and degradation of Auburn and all these other universities has been going on for a very long time. But my point still stands. So this boils down to a failure of nerve and a failure to realize that we are in a war. We are at war. Okay? The enemies are not at the enemies were at the gates, but now they're inside the gates. There's a real war that's going on, and it is a culture war. a battle for the ethos of this nation. And the ethos is set by the institutions, by the education, the schools, by the seminaries and churches, by the media and entertainment, and by our laws. These institutions are what sets the ethos of a nation. And those institutions have been hijacked by secularists and people who hate Christ. And so now the ethos that was once Christian in our land is no longer. We are at war. We are at war. And it's a culture war now, but culture wars can turn kinetic. I'm going to get into that. More on that later. If you're running a ministry or you own a business, my guess is that you've been thinking about starting a podcast for a while now, but for various reasons it hasn't happened yet. Send me an email. I need to personally connect you with Yonder Child Media. They built this studio in 2 days and tackle all of the production. I just come in, start talking, and leave. It's that easy. They do everything else. Whether you want to record at your business or a home office like they just built for me, you come in, start talking, and Yonder Child will do everything else. Send me an email. That's going to be Bryan, Bryan.Dawson, Dawson at 1819news.com, and I'd be happy to personally connect you. At 1819 News, we have uncovered countless mind-boggling things happening at these universities. Everything from race-based admissions and woke, anti-white, racist curriculum to LGBTQ nonsense and the hiring of an individual to coach special needs students. Okay. This guy they hired a guy to coach special needs students that was recently, who had recently resigned from a middle school there in Auburn at Drake Middle School. If you'll remember this story that we covered, we exposed this teacher at Drake Middle School for grooming children using a podcast and his Instagram feed to groom children and present his kind of homosexual lifestyle and trans lifestyle and all this other stuff to the children. He resigned because we exposed him for that. And then Auburn University hired him shortly after that to coach special needs students. I'm just going to let that sit there for a little bit and just think about that. When we brought it to their attention, they did nothing. They did nothing. Okay. They did nothing. And then after Charlie Kirk was shot, this same gay, trans, whatever thing person that was grooming students at a middle school in the same town as the university that they hired to coach special needs kids, lo and behold, after Charlie Kirk dies, he comes out and says, "Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. Your children are better off with you dead." And then they fired him. What if the people at Auburn University, upon learning, so we'll give them the benefit of the doubt, maybe they didn't know. Maybe they didn't know the guy they just hired to coach special needs, autistic children, autistic students, college-age students. Maybe they didn't know the guy they hired to coach autistic kids, students at Auburn. Maybe they didn't know that he was a groomer. Well, then when we did the story that showed that he was a groomer and they hired him, what if the people in positions of power at Auburn University said, we actually have a responsibility to protect these children, and then that's not okay, and we got to get rid of this guy? What if they protected it and they kept the bad out and infused the good? We are, after all, talking about the hearts, minds, and souls of the most precious thing in our nation, and the most precious thing to our citizens is the hearts, minds, and souls of their children. That's what you're entrusted with, people who are in positions of power at universities, the hearts, minds, and souls of the next generation that will go on to be our presidents and congressmen and business owners and institution leaders and everything else. You're entrusted with their hearts, minds, and souls. The left understands that that's what's at stake. That's why they're fighting with everything they can to steal the universities. They're fighting with everything they have to steal our universities. And those who are in positions of power at these universities have a responsibility to keep that stuff out. Keep it out. Nobody wants it there. Nobody's serious. But instead, they hire this guy that was a homosexual that was grooming children, and now they've got him coaching special needs students at Auburn. What the hell is that? You can't make it up, okay? Let's go through some other ones. Auburn's College of Architecture, Design, and Construction uses loophole to violate divisive concept laws. So recently, our legislature passed a law saying that any publicly funded school cannot teach divisive concepts. It would be DEI, ESG, diversity, equity, inclusion, all right, environmental, social, and governance, and all this other LGBTQ nonsense. There's a law restricting publicly funded schools from doing that. Well, they found a loophole, and in a architecture, design, and construction class, they're like, you know what these kids need? They need some trans training, because you can't build a house unless you know about the gays. You can't build a 3-story building unless got to know about the gays. You freaking kidding me? Like, why? The stuff that I see and hear on a regular basis as we look into these universities is mind-boggling and vile and wicked and disgusting. And the people who are there have in positions of power have a responsibility to protect this university from the bad and infuse it with that which is good. And guess what? God is the one who says what's bad and what's good. It's not hard. Okay? We've been duped into believing in the myth of neutrality, that there's no such thing as objective good and objective evil. Yes, there is. And God is the arbiter. And he tells us in his word what is good and what is bad. And guess what? Grooming children sexually, whether homosexual or heterosexual grooming of children that are your music students in middle school, is evil every single time. There's actually not a way that you can do that and not be in grave sin. The Bible says, Jesus says, if you harm one of these children, it would be better for you if you wrapped a millstone around your neck and were thrown into the ocean. Have you ever seen a millstone? I've seen a millstone. They're about 5 to 6 feet tall, and they're made of like pure concrete. Imagine having that wrapped around your neck and thrown into the ocean. So it would be better for that guy that was grooming those kids at that middle school in Auburn to have a millstone wrapped around his neck and be thrown into the ocean, according to Jesus Christ, than to do what he did. And instead of not hiring the guy that should have had a millstone, you put him around special needs students. Okay. And now at your College of Architecture, Design, and Construction, you're using loopholes because our legislature has finally come in and taken, said, okay, if you guys aren't going to do it, we're going to do it. And the legislature passes good legislation that's going to keep this stuff out. Now they're going to have to get rid of the loopholes. But thank God our legislature has gone in and put in some stopgaps and is at least trying to keep this stuff out of our universities, because they understand what's at stake, the hearts, minds, and souls of future generations of Alabamians. But it shouldn't be up to the legislature, though it's going to have to be. It should be up to the people who are in positions of power, this university, and universities across the states and across the country. It's not just Auburn again, but I'm focusing on Auburn to make a point, because it is the crown jewel of our state. It is the best thing. And if we were to be able to just take the bull by the horns at this university and bring this university into where it's supposed to be, we would not only be the crown jewel of the state, we'd be the crown jewel of the nation as far as what universities are supposed to be. We have the opportunity to do that here in Alabama at Auburn University with the people that are on the board of trustees. Great people, okay? Great school, great teachers, great students, great families, great alumni. It's all there, but we have to get rid of the bad and infuse the good, okay? I'll go on. Auburn University's DEI toolkit rebranded Community and Belonging. So Auburn University is complying with Alabama's DEI law, so these divisive concept laws that were passed. In order to comply with them, they rebranded their DEI syllabus toolkit as Community and Belonging. This preserved the original content, including trigger warnings and pronoun usage, to evade legal restrictions while maintaining the same ideology. You can't negotiate with these people. You have to fire them. If you know they're doing this stuff, just fire them. Get sued. I'm sure we'd be able to start a legal fund. Somebody somewhere would start a legal fund. And, maybe instead of NIL money for the next 10 years, we just do a legal fund to get rid of all of this stuff. We'll call it a rebuilding year. But I digress. Auburn promotes queer criminology and critical race theory, specifically targeting conservative students. Man. And again, the only school I would send my son to, who's 16 years old, the only school I would send him to in the entire state of Alabama is Auburn. And that's where he plans to go. So again, it's not that I hate Auburn. It's because I love Auburn and I want this stuff gone by the time my son gets there. Call me selfish, but it's bigger than that. It's obviously bigger than what I want. But targeting conservative students, which my son would be one of, okay? Auburn University's Crime and Justice in America course pushes queer criminology and critical race theory using a textbook that calls the justice system a racist tool to oppress black Americans. Oogity boogity. It targets privileged or conservative students for re-education, aiming to dismantle their traditional views on police and prisons, ignoring Alabama's laws against divisive concepts. It's less criminology and more ideological ambush. I'll go on. Auburn's former DEI deputy chief still available for DEI-related questions. Auburn University, complying with Alabama's 2024 anti-DEI law, closed its Office of Inclusion and Diversity, gave the appearance of fixing things, but reassigned Dr. Jawan Robinson, to a non-DEI role. You got to get rid of Jawan, okay? Got to. Jawan ain't going to stop doing this until you get rid of Jawan. Despite claims of compliance, Robinson's 2022 dissertation advocates test optional policies used by Auburn to increase black enrollment, suggesting the university may be continuing equity-focused practice under new titles to evade the law. Maybe this is the guy that they actually recently got rid of. Let me fact check really quick. Hold, please. I know they did finally get rid of someone, or someone resigned that had to do with the admissions stuff. Admissions person at Auburn who resigned recently. Was it Jawan? Nope, it was Phil Verpel. So Jawan's still there. Got a lot of work to do. Anyway, I mean, I could go on and on for hours with these stories that we've uncovered, but I'll give a couple more just for fun. Unethical and potentially illegal race-based admissions. This is where the Phil Verpel thing comes in, okay? A report by Auburn University's The Plainsman alleges misconduct in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions, including high staff turnover, 15 resignations since November 23, unethical or potentially illegal race-based admissions practiced under Executive Director Phil Verpel, who's gone. Good job, Auburn. Give credit where credit is due. And retaliatory culture. But the lady above Phil Verpel, I think Phil Verpel's the scapegoat here. You got to get rid of the next lady. Got to. Let that be your first thing to show you're serious. In a retaliatory culture, the office, now understaffed, faces scrutiny amid a federal probe into race-based discrimination at universities. So whistleblower says race-based admissions includes vice president. Here we are. Whistleblowers allege Auburn University's vice president of enrollment, Geoffrey Gaiman, promoted race-based practices in admissions, hiring, and scholarships, including targeting black African American students and adjusting test scores. The Tiger Takeoff program is cited as evidence, despite Auburn's claims of race-neutral, merit-based admissions compliant with Alabama's DEI law. Insiders call for investigation, warning of federal scrutiny. So again, I'm getting the people mixed up on who's who. April Marie Fogel's done a phenomenal job uncovering all of this stuff. But the point is, you see the stuff that's going on there, race-based stuff, gay stuff, trans stuff, getting around the laws that exist so that they can force this stuff down the throats of our children. Okay, it's got to stop. All right. So these are not small infractions, nor are they fringe happenings. Sadly, we've come to expect this type of behavior at Auburn University, as well as the other universities across the state. But with each story we publish, we have students, faculty, and alumni reaching out with 10 more, even more heinous than the last, okay? Where do you think we're getting these stories, okay? I know the people at Auburn are going to be listening to this podcast. I know, okay? Where do you think we're getting the stories? Do you think we're like Mission Impossible-ing in? And like getting files or something? No. We have students, we have teachers, faculty, alumni who bring us this stuff, okay? But we're going to keep reporting until it's fixed. And I know there's been some efforts. What do we do about 1819 News? Oh my God, what are we going to do about 1819 News? Get rid of the trannies. That's one thing you could do. So how did we get here? Okay, so now Got another part of the meta-narrative that you have to see. I'm hoping I brought everything in real tight with that last story I told about Christendom and dominion and Christ's rule being known. And how do we do that? We do that by taking responsibility for the institutions that we have authority over, by keeping out the bad and infusing the good. And this is literally how the West was built, is through this process. It's how we keep the things that are good, good, and, things that are bad out, right? So not to sound like Putin in the Tucker Carlson interview, but to understand what's going on, we have to go way back in Russian history. Don't know if you guys remember the Putin interview. I thought that was a funny anecdote. Anyway, it's the beginning of the war on Christendom. So you have Christendom that I explained to you that was built all over the West where Christ had dominion. Well, in Russia in 1917 was the beginning of the destruction or the attempt to destroy Christendom. Okay? So under the Romanov dynasty from 1613 until 1917, Russia was a Christian nation. So Christendom even went as far east as Moscow, okay, and into Russia. Under the Romanov dynasty from 1613 until 1917, Russia was a Christian nation. It's hard for us to wrap our minds around that, as we have only ever thought about Russia through a Soviet communist lens because of what Russia has been in our lifetimes. But what it's been in our lifetimes is a result of what happened in 1917. That dynasty came to a screeching halt in the Bolshevik Revolution that gets renamed the Russian Revolution because they don't want you to know it's Bolshevism, the Russian Revolution, like the American Revolution, No, this is completely different. These were Bolsheviks. These were people who hated Christ and wanted to destroy any form of Christ's rule being known on the earth, okay? So that dynasty came to a screeching halt in the Bolshevik Revolution, where Marxists revolted and overthrew the crown and brutally slaughtered Tsar Nicholas II and his family. Tsar Nicholas, his wife, and 5 children, their 4 servants, and their doctor were being held as prisoners. On July 16th of 1918, they were lined up in a room when Bolshevik guards burst into the room and opened fire. Now, they were told that they were bringing them down into this room so that they could take a picture of them to send to the press to show that they were still alive. And so they were all put on their knees and lined up in this room. Again, Tsar Nicholas and his wife and his 5 children and some others were put on their knees in this room and told that they were going to come in and take a picture. Lined up in a room for that. And then Bolshevik guards burst into the room and opened fire. The bullets ripped through them, but many survived the shooting, including most of the children. So as the gun smoke began to clear and the room was filled with the smell of gunpowder from everyone unloading all of their magazines into the men, women, and children in the room, the children were finished off with knives and bayonets as well as any other survivors. The execution took roughly 20 minutes to complete. Imagine how barbaric that must have been. The bodies of the royal family were hastily buried in the woods outside of town in shallow graves. Royalty slaughtered, children stabbed to death, and their bodies put in shallow graves. That's the people that we're up against, okay? These are the people taking over Auburn University. These are the people that want to, that are coming out and celebrating Charlie Kirk being shot in the throat. You see it? Tell me you see it. Help me understand that you understand, that you see it, that these are the same people. You see it? I hope you see it. Okay? These people that stabbed those children to death and buried them in a shallow grave, royalty, these are the same people that want to slit your throat and my throat and kill our children, okay? And that's what's at stake in the culture war, because the culture war will turn kinetic once they have critical mass. And we're the only thing stopping them from having critical mass, okay? So we have a right and a responsibility to fight back against this stuff. Otherwise, every one of us is going to be the Romanovs. Do you see that? I hope you see that. You got to see it. You got to see it. You see it. All right. The Bolshevik Revolution directly led to Soviet Russia and the establishment of a communist state. With their success, they wanted to move west, but found they were unable to move communism, Marxism, whatever you want to call it. They couldn't move it west via tanks, planes, and traditional warfare. The culture of the West was too thick and patriotic for them to foment revolutionary discontentment among the working class the way they did in Russia. The destruction of the West has always been the ultimate goal, not just the West, but the destruction of Christendom. to uproot that or to destroy where Christ has dominion, to send the serpent into the garden all over again, okay? The destruction of the West and Christendom was the ultimate goal, and so they devised a plan to move communism and Marxism west, socialism, whatever you want to call it, not by tank, but through culture. Not through traditional warfare, but through cultural warfare. This is where the term culture war comes from, okay? Bolsheviks trying to move west. They couldn't win with tanks and planes and traditional warfare, so they said, okay, we're going to have to move our ideology west through subversion of culture-shaping institutions and to change the Christian ethos in these Christian lands to a secular ethos, a Christ-hating ethos, and then we'll be able to destroy where Christ has dominion. Okay? Their plan was later called the Long March Through the Institutions. Hopefully you've heard of this. But was essentially a plan to destroy Western cultural hegemony or Christian hegemony. And they did it by subverting the primary institutions. The church, schools, seminaries and churches, schools, media, entertainment, and news, and our legal system. There's more than that, but those are the kind of the core four. And also the elites. There's a thing called elite theory. I'm not going to get into this stuff. I'm just going to try and keep it simple. But they had to take over education. They had to take over the church and seminaries, which is why I brought Meg Basham on to talk about how they were trying to take over the church still in America. It's the same play, okay? Take over the seminaries and churches, take over education, take over media, entertainment, and news, and then take over our laws. So anyway, and so they had to subvert those institutions. It began with Antonio Gramsci and culminated further at the Frankfurt School in Germany, where their leading thinkers fled Nazi Germany and landed at Columbia University, where the Long March officially began in America. This is not a well-kept secret. They wrote down their strategy and shared their plans broadly. Numerous books from prominent people on the political right have been written exposing it. Hold, please. None dare call it treason. See if we can get some focus there. It's not focusing. Anyway, None Dare Call It Treason by John Stormer. Masters of Deceit was written by the FBI's J. Edgar Hoover. Masters of Deceit, there it is. The Naked Communist, is that next? The Naked Communist. Fault Lines by Vodi Bakum. And I have like 200 copies of this next book in my office, but I don't have any of them in my office here at my house, which is The Death of the West by Pat Buchanan, which is the first one I suggest you pick up. The Death of the West by Pat Buchanan is the first book you need to pick up to get in the game, baby. I was handed that book by my cellmate in prison. I've said this on like the last 3 podcasts, but that was the first book, okay? You read that book, and then you read these other books, and you're going to have a much more clear picture of what we're up against. Anyway. So, communism, Marxism, progressivism, secularism, wokeism, it's all the same thing, okay? It's a bunch of different names for the same thing. It is an anti-Christ ideology. And when I say anti-Christ, I'm not talking about the rapture in the book of Revelations. I say that because the people that talk about the rapture say the book of Revelations, but if you'll look in your Bible, the book of Revelation doesn't have an S at the end. The book, it's Revelation. Anyway, I digress. That's not what I'm talking. I'm not talking about the Antichrist. I'm talking about anti-Christ ideology, and what I mean by that is it's a one-to-one inversion of the Christian faith. Marxism, communism, wokeism, secularism, the woke mind virus, whatever you want to call it. Okay, it is a direct one-to-one inversion of the Christian faith. Whatever God says is good, they say is bad. Whatever God says is bad, they put in a parade in front of your children. Get it? It's a direct inversion of the Christian faith. That's how you know this is spiritual warfare, is the ideology that we're up against is literally a direct inversion. Directly inverted, okay? A one-to-one opposite of the Christian faith. That is it. It is anti-Christ. It is against Christian civilization. It wants to steal, kill, and destroy that which Christ has built. You get it yet? I hope you're starting to get it. Hope you're getting it. Whatever God says is good, they say is bad. Whatever God says is bad, they say is good. It's what is up is down, down is up. Adherents of this ideology understand that for them to win, they must subvert and or hijack the Christian institutions our forefathers built so they can create a secular ethos. Secular ethos. And the ethos is what a culture just accepts to be up and what the culture accepts to be down. As a culture, because of the churches, because of the education, because of the media and entertainment and news, and because of our laws, that is our way of saying, if we obey God in our institutions, which includes Auburn University and these other schools, you don't have to, I'm not saying that Auburn University needs to proselytize or become an evangelical school or anything like that. If they would just operate with a Christian ethos of what God says is good and what says is bad, okay, the society would have a Christian ethos, and that is what Western civilization was built on. It had a Christian ethos. But this ethos is what Marxism has set out to destroy because they couldn't win with tanks and planes and traditional warfare. They had to kill the Christian ethos and replace it with a Christ-hating secular, is what they called it, a secular ethos. It's secular. We're neutral. We're neutral. We just don't want religion. We're secular. We're atheists. We're secular. We're neutral. No, secularism and atheism is anti-Christ. It hates Jesus. Jesus says, if you're not with me, you're against me. Okay? There's no such thing as neutrality in this fight. The idea of atheism and secularism was just a ploy. What did Satan say? What is the old saying about Satan is that the greatest trick he ever pulled is getting the people to think that he doesn't exist. That is what atheism and secularism is. It is 100% satanic, anti-Christ plan to destroy the West. And so they use atheism and secularism, and they created a secular atheist ethos. And what that's actually doing is destroying what our forefathers handed us. And we're allowing it to happen as the posterity that's been entrusted with this because we're not keeping the bad out and infusing the good, the objective good, true and beautiful. We're not infusing that. We're not keeping out the objective bad because we've been fooled into thinking that there's such a thing as neutral in our institutions and in our education and in our churches and in our families. There's no such thing as neutrality. Okay. If you love me, you will do what I command. Jesus. Who said that? Jesus. Jesus said that. If you love me, you will do what I command. Think about that. This is the culture war. Okay, what is the war in culture war? Devin Foley, our chief operations officer, did a great piece on what is culture war. You can look that up. Just go into Google and put what is culture war 1819, and there's an article by Devin Foley. And he says, the war is, imagine two wrestlers fighting each other. And the goal is to exert your will upon the other one, these two wrestlers. And ideally, you would be so strong that you would be able to exert your will upon the other without compunction. You just make them do whatever it is that you want them to do, to exert your will on the other. And there's a resistance, and that's what the war is. But ideally, you would so win the war by just full force exerting your will upon the other one. And so the problem that we have in the West is that the people who seek to steal, kill, and destroy that which Christ has created in the West, they know that they're at war and they are trying to exert their will upon us. And we're like, we just want to get along with you. We're very tolerant because we believe the Bible says that we should be tolerant and we don't want to be mean. In the speech I gave at the Tucker Carlson event, the 11th commandment, Vodi Bakum, I just showed you a Vodi Bakum book. He said, the 11th commandment, thou shalt be nice and forget the other 10. We've been eaten up with this way of thinking. And because of that, our land, our inheritance, our culture is being completely eaten up by wickedness because we refuse to stand and we refuse to get in this fight. The fight. You may not be interested in war, but war is interested in you. Okay? You might not want to fight, but the fight has come to you. And there is no choice. We have to fight, and we have to fight with the same furiosity in which they're trying to steal, kill, and destroy. We must fight out of love for God and a love for what we have, not out of a hatred of what's in front of us, okay? We fight because we love what's behind us, not because we hate what's in front of us. We need to fight back with the same ferocity at which everything is trying to steal, kill, and destroy. And again, it's all the third world migration. That's why I've been focused on this. They're coming over here and just plundering. They're the critters getting in the garden, if you will. Okay, but then there's the religious aspect, which is this secular, atheist, Bolshevik, whatever you want to call it, that's coming over here. That's the spiritual aspect that's actually trying to devour Christendom. but it's all running roughshod over our heritage and our inheritance. Remember, those culture shaping institutions that create the ethos that we have to get back are our schools. Have to get them back. No more neutrality in schools. Our seminaries and churches. Stop being woke and gay. Okay. Be biblical, be bold. The whole truth. Okay. Media, entertainment, and news, where I operate, have to take that back. And then our laws. We have to have laws that actually honor God. And then ultimately the government writ large. I mean, our FBI, our CIA, FBI, DOJ, everything's completely eaten up with communist, Marxist, progressives. I say communist a lot, and people are like, well, it sounds like McCarthyism. Well, McCarthy was right, okay? We've been completely hijacked by communists, so forgive me. Woke mind virus, is that better? So the government, the entire Democrat Party has been completely hijacked by communist, progressive, Christ-hating progressives, whatever you want to call them. All right, so to wrap this up and put a bow on it, I'm calling on those who are in positions of power in these once great institutions, starting at Auburn University, to go to war. Go to war. War has been waged upon you. You may not be interested in war, but war is interested in you. The institution that you are that God is going to hold you responsible for, that you've taken over in these positions of power in these great institutions, that the hearts, minds, and souls of children and future generations are being entrusted to you. You have a responsibility to get the bad out. Those things that are objectively bad need to be removed, and you need to infuse this institution with what is objectively good, true, and beautiful. That'll wrap it up. Until next time, put your trust in God and keep your powder dry.